Hi, I'm BECMI Berserker. Welcome to my channel, where today we'll be diving into the initial pages of the BECMI system. Specifically, we're going into the Red Box, which was released in 1983. The Red Box, or the basic set for the Dungeons and Dragons game, actually contained two booklets. Here are mine. And they're signed. Sorry for the gratuitous boasting, I'm just so proud. Anyway, one of the booklets was called the Player's Manual, and the other called the Dungeon Master's Rulebook, which you were advised not to read if you wanted to be a player more than run games, just to keep the game a bit more mysterious for you. I'm going to stick my neck out here and state that this basic set had the best and most detailed introduction to Dungeons & Dragons out of all the editions. It set the scene, involved you in a small story, drip-fed you the concept of ability scores and other stats, before then enabling you to take part in a small solo adventure. And this was all in the first 22 pages of the 63-page Player's Manual. Most importantly, it set the tone of the Dungeons & Dragons game, it being a game of fantasy role-playing set in a world that was both fabulous and dangerous. And it did this by introducing us to Alina the cleric, and the antagonist, Bargle the magic user. I swear I stared at this picture for hours as a kid. As mentioned earlier, the basic set begins with a small story, where you're plunged into the role-playing concept on the first page by taking on the role of a novice fighter. This is premised by the intriguing introduction. Imagine. It is another place, another time. The world is much like ours was, long ago, with knights and castles and no science or technology, no electricity, no modern comforts of any kind. Imagine. Dragons are real, werewolves are real, monsters of all kinds live in caves and ancient ruins, and magic really works. Imagine. You are a strong hero, a famous but poor fighter. Day by day you explore the unknown, looking for monsters and treasure. The more you find, the more powerful and famous you become. Now you have to remember, this was at a time when fantasy was a little known genre, so an introduction like this evoked all sorts of fantastic imagery so that the contents of the book and the concept of the game became a mouth-watering prospect. So, where do Alina and Bargle fit into all this? Well, as you read on, you learn that there are caves near your hometown that may have treasures guarded by monsters, but also may hold the whereabouts of a bandit called Bargle, who has been terrorizing the town. Capturing him could make you a hero, so you decide to strap on your sword and seek him out. The paragraphs that then follow are written in the second person and inform you of what is happening in the story. You encounter a goblin guard who attacks you on sight, and you are instructed on how to resolve combat in a simple way. The goblin runs away and you cautiously follow, before spying a large rattlesnake near a number of gold coins, and also in the way of where you want to go. So you are forced into a simple combat once more, this time to consolidate what you're learning. This particular combat also introduces you to the concept of the saving throw in case you are hit by its poisonous bite. Then comes some information that sets the tone for injury in D&D. You are hurt, but there is nothing you can do about it right now. The damage your fighter has taken can be healed by a few days' rest. A few days' rest? We're talking about a small number of hit points here. This is letting you know that injury is serious and difficult to recover from. You want to avoid it whenever possible. It's also letting you know that time is a resource that is important in the game. Before continuing, the text then reads after suggesting you move on. Remember though that you are hurt. If you continue on, beware. If you see another snake or something else that looks dangerous, you should probably go back. Don't get killed. Live to fight another day. The treasure will wait. And so we are introduced to the concept of cautious play. You are dead when you hit 0 hit points. No death saves. If you're low on hit points, you'd better run, and there's no shame in it. The world is dangerous, and is an uncaring place. In BECMI, you are weak when you start off, but ambitious, and rewards will come with clever play. And in this introduction, you are ambitious and brave. You continue past the dead snake, entering a room where a beautiful woman in armour like your own is praying. And so we meet your first ever NPC, Alina. The importance of Alina cannot be understated. She is friendly, and she even heals you of the wounds you received from the snake. Most importantly, she forms a relationship with you, the reader, as you are captivated by the fact that she can cast spells, making you wonder whether you might be able to do the same someday. Through Alina, you are briefly introduced to the cleric class, but before you can learn more, she suggests joining up and tracking the goblin that escaped from you earlier and ran through this room. Now you're not alone, and already you're thinking you might be able to deal with Bargle. It isn't long before you encounter a group of ghouls, with the text using Alina as a vehicle to let you know what the undead are, and what they're capable of. You're then told that Alina uses a power called Turning Undead to frighten the ghouls away, so that you can continue. Again, you are introduced to the abilities of another class, which intrigues you to learn more about this game. But you don't have time right now. The introduction has transported you elsewhere, to a strange dungeon complex where you walk alongside the beautiful cleric Alina before hearing voices up ahead, and learn that Bargle and the goblin are just around the corner. Alina is confident and wants to attack the villains with surprise, but she is worried about the potential magic that Bargle may unleash, and volunteers to fight him with her spells whilst you take on the goblin. This is a really good example to the reader that planning is an important part of any confrontation, and surprise is the most powerful tool. As it turns out, you and Alina attack your enemies just as Bargle has made himself invisible. The text encourages you to resolve your combat with the goblin, but also describes what's going on with Alina, increasing the tension for the reader. As you battle the goblin, Alina looks wildly around for the invisible magic user, waving her mace to and fro in the air. It seems to hit something, and you hear a deep grunt. She keeps waving her mace, but without further success, so she stops and casts a spell. You don't see what her spell does, so you concentrate on fighting. After further combat resolution with the goblin, the following happens. Alina can't find Bargle, and is starting to look worried. Suddenly the sound of a spell comes from a far corner of the room. The cleric turns and runs in that direction, waving her mace and shouting. The black-robed magic user appears in the same corner as the spell noise, with a glowing arrow floating in the air beside him. He points at Alina. The arrow shoots out and hits her. She wails and falls with a sigh, collapsing in the middle of the room. The glowing arrow disappears. You defeat the goblin and charge the evil magic user, even though he is casting a spell at you. It is at this point you are instructed to make a saving throw against spells and continue reading from a certain place depending on your result. On a failure, you have been charmed and must read through several paragraphs of the evil magic user Bargle manipulating you into leaving Alina behind and escorting him from the dungeon, which as a new player was enormously frustrating, but also developmental, in that you learn that not everything goes your way, but that the story continues to grow in unpredictable ways despite a failed roll. Once out of the caves, Bargle puts you to sleep and escapes, and when you wake you admonish yourself for being a fool and resolve to find out what happened to poor Alina. If your save against the charm was successful, you attack the magic user and kill him in one blow. You check on Alina and your worst fears are confirmed. She is dead. Now it's hard to put into words just how profound this moment was when reading it for the first time, which is why I think it resounds so strongly even today with players who had the same experience. Alina, the beautiful and polite cleric you had just met, the woman who was your first NPC, was dead, killed by a magic missile. Worse, there was no ending that could have avoided this. Alina's death was fated as soon as you opened the pages to this book. The tutorial ends with you taking her body back to town and receiving a small token of gratitude, but the real result of this passage of fantasy roleplay introduction was to teach you that, in this game of Dungeons and Dragons, life is fragile and magic is extremely dangerous. You might form a relationship with someone, but in a matter of seconds, all potential for life can be snuffed out. This is why I believe that the effect of the story of Alina and Bargle was to set the tone for play in the BECMI game. It taught players to be cautious, to be wary of anything not understood, and most importantly of all, that success is more difficult if you work alone. The legacy of Alina and Bargle has lasted through the previous 4 decades, with many early players even admitting that Alina was their first literary crush. She has a special place in the hearts of many. As for Bargle, for most players he escaped. The save and throw was pretty difficult. And subsequently his name has popped up in numerous future adventures, and also the Mystara campaign setting. Consequentially, Bargle has such a strong place in D&D canon, so far as to be the subject of an adventure in the final printed copy of Dungeons magazine in 2007, called Kill Bargle, which was very cathartic to many older players carrying a bit of PTSD from their first introduction to him and Alina's death. Furthermore, this canonic event has spawned roleplay and board game products specifically centred on seeking vengeance for Alina's death. That's a lot of teenage angst built up right there. Ultimately, the introduction to the 1983 basic set has demonstrated its importance in teaching people how to play the game, and its impact is clearly widespread. So much more so than any other D&D introduction out there, or any other RPG introduction in my opinion. It's a shame this introduction wasn't included in the Rules Cyclopedia when it was released in 1991. It probably would have been the icing on what was already a great cake. That said, Alina lives on forever in our hearts, and, hopefully, in the hearts of others willing to give BECMI a try. Well, that's it for this video. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it. I plan to do more as I work through the BECMI catalogue, and occasionally share my views on the direction current D&D is going. The videos do take some time to produce, so if you enjoy them, then please consider buying me a coffee, link in the description, but no worries otherwise. Times are hard, and let's face it, you don't know me from Adam. But I'm loving this trip down memory lane, and it's great to share it with you. I'm BECMI Berserker. Please let me know your experiences of Alina and Bargle in the comments, and I hope to see you back here soon.